On today's episode of Let's Talk F1, we discuss Sergio Perez staying at Force India for one more year, George Russell finally joins Formula 1, Williams finally have a British F1 driver back, and Formula 1 drivers make their way over to Formula E. All this and more, next. So, welcome back everyone to Let's Talk F1. Let's just clear it up quickly before we get into today's news. This is a shorter bonus sort of episode of Let's Talk F1. I explained to you guys that this week hopefully I'll be able to jump right back into a normal schedule, and it's not quite gone the way I planned. Things have gone on out of my control, which has sort of messed that up a little bit. But what I'm hoping to do is just continue the schedule, but just delay it by one day, if that makes sense. So hopefully tomorrow, Formula E show, but can't guarantee anything. Busy day tomorrow. But because of the qualifying being late on Saturday and Sunday the race being late, hopefully over the weekend I can get a few bits and bobs out. But that's by the by. Today, funnily enough, we got the news that Sergio Perez will stay at Force India, or Racing Point Force India as they're currently known, for one more season at least. He got his contract extension signed and sorted and fully announced today ahead of the American Grand Prix. Now, the reason this is a little bit odd is that many people, although they believed it was pretty much confirmed it was going to happen, many people really did believe that it was going to be before the Mexican Grand Prix. So it's quite a strange one that seemingly out of nowhere, they've decided to announce it here before the American Grand Prix, despite next time out it's the Mexican one. So a little bit of a strange sort of PR move there from Force India. But nevertheless, we did gather that this was a done deal a long time ago. So if you were unaware, midway through the season, when Force India was still Sahara Force India, owned by Vijay Mallya, Sergio Perez put the team into administration to save hundreds of jobs within the team and keep that alive for those one or two races where the team really didn't have funding whatsoever. It was Perez's efforts that, well, pretty much led to Lawrence Stroll and his consortium buying out the team, becoming Racing Point Force India. And it's because of that, many people felt that, yes, Lance Stroll will most likely still move to Force India, and we'll touch on that in a second, but also because Perez, well, risked his career, his public image for the team, many believed that was a good enough reason to keep him on. And although I'm not his biggest fan, Sergio Perez, he is a good driver. He is a good driver, he's a solid driver, and the other current driver within the team is also a solid driver, Esteban Ocon. And, well, I was going to move on to it a little bit later, but let's talk about it now. So, with Perez staying at Force India for next year, we've only got one seat left within the team. And like I mentioned a second ago, with Lawrence Stroll now owning the team, it's very likely that Lance Stroll will be moving over there next year. Claire Williams has hinted about it, a few of the Force India guys have hinted about it, and I think in general in the motorsport world, we just know it's going to happen. Let's be totally honest there. There is still a seat at Williams, one seat left after George Russell became a full-time race seat driver for next year, but that still seems a bit unclear who's going to be driving there. So there's still a chance that Stroll could stay at Williams, but for this video, and let's be totally honest, Stroll is going to be in that Racing Point Force India, or whatever they're going to be called, next year. So let's look at Ocon then. He's been great this year, and he is still in the fight for 7th in the championship. The Mercedes young driver deserves a seat in Formula 1, and many a time on Let's Talk F1, and well, not just myself, but the majority of people throughout the Formula 1 community would agree that Ocon deserves a seat in Formula 1. Last year, I didn't rate him too highly, if I'm being totally honest, but this year, he's really won me over. Definitely, and I've been really impressed with Esteban and his performances this year. And you know what? I'd love to see him in Formula 1, and although it's my personal opinion, I really do believe it's the opinion of the majority of the community as well. But let's look at the facts then. So he's a Mercedes young driver, and what this really means, if you're not a huge fan of Formula 1, but you're just watching this to just see what's going on with this deal. Esteban Ocon, a Mercedes young driver, basically this means the team Mercedes, so the team that Lewis Hamilton drives for, they own his contract. And at the moment, they sort of loan drivers out to smaller teams so they can build up experience. That's the sort of idea behind it. But what's happened is that because now Stroll owns Force India, so obviously Perez will stay there and Lance Stroll will move in, Mercedes don't really have anywhere to loan him out to. Because George Russell, another one of their young drivers, is at Williams. So that's the only real seat that he's going to be able to really visibly get. And the reason he wouldn't go to a Toro Rosso, which is the other seat available, is because they're owned by Red Bull. And obviously Red Bull don't want a competitor like Mercedes having one of their drivers in their car, if you can sort of catch my vibe. So really, this deal with Perez staying is more about Esteban Ocon. And will he get the seat at Williams? And if I was going to really put money on it, it would be a difficult one. I'm almost bottling it there, but it really is a toss of the coin. I mean, let's look at it from Williams' standpoint here. They need money. Mercedes definitely can finance Ocon to be in that seat, but is Ocon going to bring the sponsorships that a driver like Sergei Sirotkin and Robert Kubica would bring? That's the sort of decision the team have to make right now. They've already got a Mercedes young driver, and Williams, many a time, Claire Williams in particular, the team principal, has said that they don't want to be a B team. They don't want to be a team where Mercedes put all their young drivers in, very similar to what Toro Rosso is to Red Bull. Williams don't want to be that, and they want to push up the grid next year. I think what's different with Ocon is that he's a proven race driver, a proven points finisher. He's even finished in the top 3 in qualifying this year, and last year he did it as well. So, why wouldn't they take him? Is the question you'd really have to ask, and what it really boils down to is the stubbornness of Williams, I believe, and the sponsorship. They're the two things that are really getting in the way. But when you look at the other driver in that team, George Russell, he's a rookie. And we've seen all the backlash that Williams have had this year for having Stroll and Sirotkin in the car. So it makes me question why they try and go through that again. I mean, there's been numerous reports that Robert Kubica has been the driving force of development of that car. Now, we don't know how true that is. We really don't know how true that is. But if Sirotkin was Russell's teammate, that's an extreme lack of an experience. An extreme lack. Well, almost the same as they had this year, which did cause them big issues in the early stage of the season, and development over the years really struggled because of it. Ocon, got to make it clear, he's not the most experienced driver on the grid, we're all aware of that, but he's had 2 full years, two and a half seasons really, going into what would be his 4th season of Formula 1. That experience in a team like Force India, fighting for podiums, could be really, really, really valuable for Williams. And it's that sort of racing instincts and racing passion that I have, that most of the community have, that think Williams should really take Ocon. They really do. And like I say, it's really going to be a toss of the coin, but we'll have to wait and see. And like I say, the news should be about Sergio Perez. Only a 1-year deal. We'll just go back to him for a second. Only a 1-year deal. For Perez, his career's stagnated, really. He's been at this team since 2014. At 2013, he was at McLaren. Unfairly pushed out of that team, really, if we're being 100% honest. But he's never really had that big chance at a top team. McLaren, even in that particular year, weren't great. Did he deserve to? Well, he performed incredibly at the beginning of his career. And even in this Force India, this year he's picked up a podium. And this Force India, at the time he picked up that podium in Baku, really didn't look like a podium car whatsoever. And it still doesn't on the majority of races. So, he's obviously got a talent, Sergio Perez. And he's obviously edging his bets by signing a 1-year deal. Now, where he will go in the year after that, it's difficult. A lot of the drives this year almost have been lining themselves, or the teams themselves have been lining their lineups up for 2021. So when the big regulation change comes in, which we don't actually think is going to be that massive, but teams are still trying to line up their drivers, their ideal driver lineup for that year. Now, Perez obviously with this new team, in quotation marks, Racing Point Force India, it's a huge unknown where they're going to be on the grid. Are they going to drop further back? Are they going to stay where they are? Are they going to even move further forward? We really don't know. We don't even know what the name of this team are going to be. So a lot of question marks around this team. And with a driver like Lance Stroll alongside him, is that going to be less pressure? Is that going to be more pressure? Because it's the boss's son. It's a hugely different dynamic that Sergio Perez is going into, despite the fact he's staying with the same team. So it's a really strange one to wrap your head around, but I think he's up to the challenge. It's just, again, that question mark on where he'll go if he doesn't decide to stay. And the only real team I can see him moving to is Haas or Williams, if I'm being totally honest with you. Renault, they've sorted their lineup for the next few years. McLaren, they've sorted their lineup. Mercedes, Ferrari. Who else have we got on the grid? I doubt he'd go to Toro Rosso. I doubt he'd go to Sauber. But I think for Perez, his options are becoming really limited now. Red Bull, I didn't mention Red Bull. They're sorted now. But he's got really limited options. So for him, this is the best move. And I hope for him that Racing Point can have a really solid year next year. And they've always punched above their weight at Force India. And it'd be great if next year they did it even more. So fingers crossed for them. But I'd love to know your thoughts about this Sergio Perez move, because I imagine a lot of people will still believe that Ocon deserves a drive over Perez. Perez has more points this year. We will throw that out there. But Ocon has more points finishes. So it's a real nip and tuck between the two of them. Race record, really close. Qualifying record, even closer. So it's a really tough one to decide between the two of them. I still think what Perez did over the summer, putting his career on the line, his public image on the line, and for those few weeks where, well, almost the entire fan base thought that Perez was throwing the team under the bus and he wasn't allowed to say anything, that could have destroyed his career. And I think for that, the team rightfully should give him an extra year, even though for the future of the team, Ocon, arguably in that sense, was the better guy. So it's a real 50-50 toss-up, but I think it's the right thing the team have done. It just all depends on whether Lance Stroll will be in that car next year or not, and let's be honest, we think he will. So I'd love to know your thoughts about that in the comments section below. But that's enough about Perez now. Let's move on to a guy that I quickly mentioned throughout that segment, and that's George Russell. Now, George Russell, a couple of weeks ago now almost, or about a week actually, I won't be too crazy, George Russell has signed for Williams on a multiple-year deal. The Mercedes young driver will be one of Williams' 2019 drivers. If you don't know who George Russell is, he, like I mentioned, Mercedes young driver, current F2 championship leader. We've mentioned him many times in the Formula 2 report, and he has been the star of the season. After a few races, it looked like it might have been Norris's championship. But then, about 4 races in, Russell from nowhere just said, you know what? I'm winning this. I'm here to win Formula 2. And since then, he has been the outstanding performer. Most feature race wins, most pole positions, most podiums. He has been brilliant for ART this year. Completely outshone his teammate Jack Aitken, and another up-and-coming Formula 1 driver, Formula 1 star, a Renault young driver is Jack Aitken. But George Russell has been able to get the better of him, the better of the entire field, including a field with Lando Norris, Nick De Vries, Alexander Albon. Such highly rated young drivers, young talent, and Russell is most likely, it's not 100% confirmed yet, and we've still got a whole weekend to go, 1 feature race and 1 sprint race, and the only real challenger is going to be Alex Albon. But Alex Albon's in his 2nd year of F2. George Russell's in his 1st year, and he's absolutely smashing it. And although there are questions, is this too soon? Does Ocon deserve the seat over George Russell? I'm really happy for him. I really am. And it's great to see more British talent coming into Formula 1. It's been a couple of years since we've had more than 1 full-time race seat for a British driver. And it's lush to see 3. I know it's a thing, it's probably a bit of an old-fashioned thing, but a little bit of national pride comes into it. And, you know, when there's no French drivers on the grid for all those years, I imagine for you French fans, it was so frustrating. The Orange Army, I mean, one of the biggest fan bases there is, who've they had to support? So it's great for us British fans that although Lewis Hamilton's getting on a bit and there are still question marks, when's he going to retire, it's great that we have these new young talent coming into Formula 1. That being said, I think it's too soon for Lando Norris at McLaren. I really do. He's really, since the McLaren announcement, he's really gone off the boil in Formula 2. So that's something to keep your eye on. But this man, George Russell, it's going to be so interesting to see whether this announcement's going to affect him into the final race. I don't think it will. But like I say, he has been great this year in Formula 2. And we spoke about him, like I say, briefly, and the consequences of him getting a seat a little bit earlier. Williams have one seat left, and do they go for an experienced guy or a guy with sponsorship? But for this man, George Russell, I don't think he cares. I think he's going to get in that car and, well, I'd love to say, start performing straight away. I mean, watching Formula 2, comparing it to last year, I don't think George Russell is on the level of Charles Leclerc. I will throw that out there. I don't think he's quite on those levels of Charles Leclerc. That being said, he has the potential to be. And if Ocon's going to have a year out next year, Russell is going to be a huge, huge contender for a potential Mercedes seat if Bottas eventually leaves. And I'll say if, because Bottas, if he gets in a bit of form next year, could very well stay in that seat for a long amount of time. So, what's in this for Russell? Obviously, there's a Formula 1 seat, and everyone loves a Formula 1 seat, and that's the dream. And the fact that he'll be in Formula 1 next year at all, like so many of these drivers that over the year have driven for, without any disrespect to Williams, subpar teams in terms of pace on track. It's just about being there, gaining experience, and trying to do the best you can. And if I'm being totally honest, I've said this on the F1 Word stream. If you haven't seen that, there will be a link in the description to that. But I really think that Williams could make a step next year. I really do believe that. I don't think they'll be anywhere near as bad as they have been this year. And I think they will be fighting in that midfield with the likes of Racing Point. So, for Russell, that's fantastic. He really has to do what Charles Leclerc has done this year and try and stand out in a subpar car. And if he can do that, then, like I say, Ocon, that could be, well, a dangerous situation for him. It really, really could. We've seen Pascal Wehrlein. Actually, this is a fantastic segue to the final story. We've seen Pascal Wehrlein, an ex-Mercedes young driver, pushed out of Formula 1 for a year, in quotation marks, and then be destroyed or taken out of the complete Mercedes young driver program completely. So, just to round off this quickly, before we move on to the final story, this is brilliant for Russell. Brilliant for Williams to get a British driver in their team once again. The last time they had that was Jenson Button, right at the beginning of his career. I want to say 2002, 2003, around then, so it's been a hell of a long time. But talking about Pascal Wehrlein, our final story is the start of the brand new Formula E Season 5 season. Season 5 season, that's a strange way of putting it. I won't bore you too much with Formula E, and I know this isn't the Formula E show. This is Let's Talk F1, it's on screen there, but you can also see on screen, Stoffel Vandoorne has signed for HWA Formula E for next year. Pascal Wehrlein has signed for Mahindra Racing. That was a bombshell. Many people expected him to maybe get to Toro Rosso next year, but he's gone to Formula E. On screen there, Felipe Massa, he'll be joining Formula E. Formula 1 hopeful Alexander Albon is joining Nissan in Formula E, and that's why I wanted to quickly mention it at the end of this video. Tomorrow, like I say, hopefully I'll be doing the Formula E show. So if you're interested at all in this, I'll be going in depth about the testing that's been going on this week and all the new liveries and this brand new Gen 2 car, which looks so, so great. But this is huge, and you probably won't know if you're not a huge fan of Formula E, but I always say for Formula E, the next thing they needed to do was get in big names. And Vandoorne, Wehrlein and Massa, they're not the biggest in the world, but it's a start. It's another step. And yes, we've got plenty of ex-Formula 1 drivers on the grid. Jerome D'Ambrosio there on screen. Piquet Jr. now on screen. Every world champion of Formula E. Well, they've been a different world champion every season, but every season it's been an ex-Formula 1 driver who's won the championship. Piquet Jr. in Season 1. Sebastian Buemi Season 2, Lucas Di Grassi Season 3, and Jean-Eric Vergne is the reigning world champion in Season 4. Formula E this year is going to be so unpredictable, and I think with these guys moving over, especially Massa and Van Dorn, I would say, that is a huge pull for Formula 1 fans. And I know for myself, being a Verline and Van Dorn fan, I have a lot of favourites in Formula E, but I think those two will be ones I'll definitely be keeping my eye on this year. And with Susie Wolff, also a big name in Formula 1, coming over this year as team principal of Venturi, the team that Massa's going to be driving for. A lot is going to go on this year with Formula E, but that will be spoken about more in depth in tomorrow's video of the Formula E show. But that is the end of Let's Talk F1. If you've got any comments or questions, put them down in the comments section below. There will be a weekend preview for the USA Grand Prix coming out in the next couple of days. So if you want to do some early predictions, you can chuck them down in the comments as well. Let me know your thoughts on Formula E. Let me know your thoughts on Sergio Perez's move and George Russell's move. Thank you for watching, guys, as always, and I'll see you in the next one.